Wait till they get a load of us. Welcome back to the Backlot 605 podcast. We are here on week number 2 of Bat Month here on Backlot 605. I'm one of your hosts. I'm Casey Kelderman. Join with me, as always, is my co-host, not Sam Lenz, because whatever, Sam Lenz can't be here, Brian Mensing.
Sam felt bad that there was the one that I had to miss a couple weeks ago, so he's like, you know what, I'll give you this one.
He's like, all right, it's my turn to take a break. I gushed for an hour and a half last week about the greatest Batman movie of all time, Batman 66. So now he had to take a break after that.
Yeah, he's like, I'm gonna go take a break in much warmer weather, the jackass.
Yeah, that is true too. Hopefully Sam is having fun in Arizona. We miss you. You will be much needed, I think, on Batman Forever, which seems like a Sam Lenz movie through and through. But we're not just going with just us two today. We are joined by returning guest, OG, best friend of the show, Andy, the fat dude Heller. Andy, what is up?
What is up, guys? How's it going? This is an exciting episode to be back on because I have a very storied history with this, my favorite movie for many, many years. Favorite movie of all time for many years.
All time, huh?
Yeah, I love this movie. Yeah, we'll get into that. We'll get into that. I love this movie, but we'll get into that.
Mm-hmm. We'll get into it. And that's one of the reasons why when we compiled this list of movies, one of them was, all right, we're doing Batman 89. We'll just put Andy's name next to that one.
I don't even think that was even a question. I just think that was a matter of, you were like, we're doing Batman 89. We need to tell Andy when he's recording.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other one was like, all right, if we're gonna do Mask of the Phantasm, Charlie Eccles called that scumbag. Charlie Eccles called it, so I guess we'll have him on for that.
He's not that bad of a guy.
Come on, Andy. Well, all right, we'll talk about that at the end of the show. I want to get your thoughts on Mr. Eccles flying solo on our other superhero themed podcast we're going to be doing in about 2 months. So we'll talk about that at the end of the show, but. Andy, what's new? What's going on Fat Dude Digs Flicks?
Well, so let's see. A lot of the same old stuff, really. I mean, it's just the same old interview show that you've come to know and love. I did have the opportunity to get Thomas Ian Nicholas on the show just before he came to town for the screening of American Pie and Rookie of the Year. And yeah, I mean, it was a ton of fun. I've been telling people, it's like the interview on the podcast, I feel like I was super nervous and it shows, but the Q&A, like after the movie, like I wish I had a chance to go back and do the podcast now, because I felt like that Q&A, just everything clicked. And I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. And I've had this weird like boost of confidence over the last couple of days where I'm just like, I'm going to ask everybody. Like, I'm going to ask every celebrity who's ever existed to be on the show. And if they say no, that's a stupid move on their part.
Depending on who you get on there, I want to be a fly on that wall.
Right? Yeah, so far, no one has said yes. But I did also, you guys always do kind of like a theme month. And I'm always just kind of like, whatever people want to talk about. But there are some things that I try to plan accordingly. Like I like to try to have horror people on in October, fans of horror movies on in October. We can talk about the movies that they love. December, sometimes Christmas movies. Well, this year I was I was in my office where all of the good thoughts come, which would be on the toilet. Mm-hmm. And it occurred to me that the month July and the word giallo sound very similar. And I was like, wouldn't it be cool if I could have like people who appreciate giallo horror on the show in July? And I was like, well, can I get new guests? And so I've spent the last couple of weeks, or the last week, trying to get people booked for a giallo month, which will be my first kind of themed month, which is basically for selfish reasons, because I want to learn how to appreciate the genre, because it hasn't really done it for me lately, or hasn't really done it for me thus far. So I'm excited to have people on that might be able to sway me otherwise. But yeah, that's really it. It's just been doing the same shit, same stuff, different day.
Yeah, you had your De Palma December idea on the toilet, which is where all great ideas do come from. Is either in the shower or on the toilet. It is the golden office of ideas, that is,
right?
in the bathroom.
Somehow the brain just gets working in there. It's just like chug, 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 chug.
It does. It does. I hope
I will throw this really quick out to you though, Andy. You made the mention about being super nervous while talking Thomasine Nicholas on for the podcast, and then it clicking during the Q&A.
Yeah.
But I would go to say is that if it had been reversed, then I think your podcast would have gone smoother if you'd done the Q&A first, because at that point you've already broken the ice.
Yeah.
I think you're just upset you didn't ask the Tara Reid question the guy asked in the Q&A.
It's true. Why didn't I ask it?
The biggest regret of your entire podcast had to have been that question.
You just need to hang up the cables and just call it good now. You've jumped the shark.
I think it was Blake who mentioned it before, before the movie even started. He's like, somebody's gonna ask, oh, did you really get with Tara Reid? I bet somebody's gonna ask that. He's like, maybe I should ask that. I think it was Blake. I could be wrong, but I think somebody from our group was like, I should ask, what was it like to get with Tara Reid? Just, being a jokester about it. Sure enough, some guy genuinely, the look on his face asking that question was like, so did you get with Tara Reid? Dude. And it's like, I've got to play this role of even-keeled moderator, but I just wanted to be like, do you know how movies work? What is your problem? This man is married with children. Don't ask. Don't be that guy. Don't give South Dakota this reputation. I'm
going to even spin it further and just to say is that whether he did or he did not, he's not going to tell you.
Right. That's a secret left to Hollywood.
Right.
Yeah. But I was like, of course.
I like, he's like, you've heard about movie magic. She was this far from me.
Yeah. And then there was the I think the gal in the audience who asked him about the thirsty duck, and it's like, can I give you a ride? Can I give you a ride? I was like, are you trying to proposition the superstar right now? What are you doing? But
however, the way she inflected the question originally was the thoughts that were going through my brain of the duck.
Yeah, it's true. So,
well, I mean, if you're not from Sioux Falls, you're going to be like, yeah, Thirsty Duck. Why not? That sounds like a cool, hip place to go play an acoustic set. I've never been there.
After we got done with the movie and after the Q&A and whatnot, I did go onto my Apple Music because I was like, if he's singing it, somebody has had to have made this, because there is a version of Stacy's Mom that is called Jason's Mom. That's about Jason Voorhees by Ice Nine Kills. So I'm like, somebody would have had to have done Stifler's Mom. And unbeknownst to me, Thomas Nicholas Band actually put out an album of all cover songs from the American Pie movies, including Stifler's Mom.
Oh.
So he's got Blink-182 on there. He's got Foo Fighters that he's done. So it was definitely worth just the going, I've got to see if this exists. And to have his version of Stifler's Mom is worth it.
He is very, very into his music now. So I think that's, great for him. That's the career pivot that he's taking. I didn't know that he was had been a musician for so long. So I was kind of like, oh, okay, well, cool. And yeah, that's what he's super passionate about. And I think it's awesome that he still is, still being creative and kind of thriving in his way.
Mm-hmm. I had a friend of mine that happened to be down at the Duck who did not know he was going to be down there, and she sent me a message. She's like, "He's actually really good."
Nice. Yeah. I had heard one of his songs, and I was kind of like, "Oh, okay," which I get. That's not a really glowing reaction to it, but yeah, I was like, "All right, cool. This is what he likes doing, so that's awesome."
Mm-hmm. That Frat Party DVD is that album I was talking about. So when he was talking about that Frat Party thing, that's what it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
All to see, I guess. Check it out. Check it out one of these days.
Yeah.
So how do we segue into Batman?
I'm going there. We're doing it.
Yeah.
You know, we're talking about movie soundtracks. You know what has a great movie soundtrack?
Batman and Robin.
Batman 1989. No seal here. We get Prince instead. Yeah.
Batman and Seal is on Batman Forever, not
No,
Batman
I
and
don't
Robin.
remember
Get-
anything from Batman and Robin.
Get your soundtracks correctly.
We'll talk about that's for patrons to look forward to me ripping apart and saying ice puns for an hour on Batman and Robin. Batman 89. No, that's the movie we're talking about, rightfully so. We're talking about the first collab between Michael Keaton, Tim Burton, the movie that really sparked Batman into the pop culture that he's kind of never left since 1989. Obviously, we talked about it last week. 66 had the TV series, I believe, up till 68 was the timeline. And from that, kind of, there was just this lull of Batman in like mainstream media until Mr. Tim Burton, hey, let's get that guy who did Pee-wee's Big Adventure to make a Batman movie. Let's talk about that, the history of this movie a little bit. Obviously, I'm going to throw it off to Brian and Andy.
Why? Because you were like not born yet?
Because I was 5 years from being born when this movie did come out.
Yeah.
And my first, okay, I'll go first then, because mine is a shorter movie history on this. My first time watching this in the theater was at the State last year when they played it. Such a fun experience. It was like, all right, this is a great time to witness Batman on the big screen for the first time, and had such a blast at like first or second row to just take in Gotham.
Yeah.
And like, for me, this is still like the pinnacle of Gotham City. This is my Gotham City. Yeah, and it was so cool to see that. But yeah, I watched this as a kid growing up, along with like Forever and the animated series and Returns. So my history of the movie was on home video. But what about you guys?
Yeah. I was obsessed. I was obsessed with this movie. I went, my older brother took me opening night. It might have been like preview night, to be honest with you. I think they may have done like a late night showing on the Thursday beforehand. But I remember, no, it probably was the Friday night. But we went to the drive-in in Council Bluffs, Iowa, to see this. And
Shout out Council Bluffs.
Council Bluffs, Iowa.
Iowa.
It was paired with the movie Her Alibi, starring Tom Selleck and Paulina Poroskova, which is actually a good movie, but that's a movie no one ever talks about or thinks about. And honestly, I fell asleep like halfway through the movie because I was a kid and all I wanted to do was watch Batman. But I was obsessed. There were trading cards, there were toys, there were comic book adaptations, magazines. Like, this was
cereal.
Cereal. Yeah,
Come on.
There was cereal. Like, this was everything to me in 1989. And I wanted to watch it as much as I could. I think I ended up seeing this probably 3 or 4 times in theaters, 2 times that first weekend. And yeah, it was just, this was so great because I had watched the 66 TV series. Like, they would play it on reruns on our kind of syndicated network when I lived in Omaha, and they'd play it every single day. So I got really excited about watching that. There were a lot of cartoons like the Super Friends. It was Batman and Robin were on there, so it was like I was a big Batman fan before this movie came out. And then, finally having this big screen adventure of Batman, I was just like, I am so excited. And yeah, it was everything for me that year. And the soundtrack too. Like, it had the score soundtrack and it had the Prince soundtrack, and they are just both amazing. So yeah, the year that this came out, I was just obsessed with it.
I honestly don't think I saw this in theaters. Just because, you figure when this comes out, we're not even teenagers yet. And, this isn't the kind of movie that my parents would go see. My parents were never big into watching a lot of movies in the theater and whatnot. We used the hell out of our HBO back in the day because that's how most people ingested most of their movies, because VHSs took 2, 3, 4 years to come out, kind of thing. I do remember that this. I agree with you, Andy. Is if there's one thing I can certainly say about Warner Brothers and DC back in the day, their marketing team, whoever put this thing together, knocked it out of the park because you could not go anywhere and not see Batman. I said this last week here on the episode is I had a schematic of the 89 Batmobile poster up on my wall, and everything that I had, poster wise was movie stuff, whatever, Dirty Dancing, Adventures in Babysitting, stuff like that. But shoot, you know, but I remember I didn't see the 66 Batman, but I remember like the old animated stuff and the toys and stuff like that were based off of like the 66 Batman. And again, it was just literally everywhere. And so I remember when we bought our first VHS player that was like $500, and the first VHS we ever owned for that here was Batman. And so between Batman and Back to the Future, I burnt the hell through those VHS tapes.
Yeah.
So it was because I mean, look at this Batmobile. How do you not love this Batmobile?
Yeah,
I'm
it's the best.
I'm so
It's still the
I-
best. Yeah, it's still the best
Yeah.
Batmobile.
I'm so. Have you seen the H.R. Geiger version of what we almost got though?
No,
I will
Doesn't
have to
count.
try to. Well, no, it doesn't count, but I will have to show you because it was. Imagine like if this Batmobile was in the style of like Aliens, because it does it well it did exist the preliminaries before the
yeah,
this it's so good.
yeah,
Speaking of the marketing campaign for this movie, that's one thing I love about going back and look at like the history of this movie is that the marketing campaign was everywhere, but to announce the movie, especially the poster, which is kind of how you did a lot of marketing back in the day, is if you're going to go to the theater, you're going to see the poster of what's coming soon. The poster is just that. It's the bat symbol and a date. Like that's ballsy advertising. Not even put the title. No Jack Nicholson, Keaton, nothing like that on there. No
yep.
Kim Basinger. You're not going to sell the movie with faces. It's just that logo. And I'm like, that's incredible. And I wish more movies, especially now when we're in like this height of superhero movies, like Spider-Man No Way Home, you could have just thrown a Spider-Man symbol on there and just sold it at that. No trailers even for that too. I get why you need trailers and stuff like that, but still, I would love to see a movie nowadays kind of take this approach to selling the movie of just the logo, the symbol of that's why you're going to go watch this movie. I think it's quite impressive and kind of shows that Warner Brothers, I think kind of crazily thought this was going to be a massive hit, where everybody else was not trying this, especially superhero movies out at the time. I think it was just a massive risk that really paid off for them in the long run.
Yeah, this is everything around this movie really kind of relied on that simplicity because that poster is I still think of it as iconic. Yeah. And I agree with you. I think if more studios relied on the less is more approach, like you see movies or posters for movies like not just the Marvel movies, which are these bizarre Photoshop messes, but Uncharted. Like I know the poster for that Uncharted movie. It's a movie that I haven't seen yet, probably won't until it comes home. But the poster of it is just like actor, like, but it's like they've been photoshopped on there in some random pattern, and it's just why do that? Like, there's gotta be a better look to sell these movies. And with the Batman poster, it's just that put the bat signal on it. And the t-shirts too, like the huge selling t-shirts were just the Batman logo, like right there in the center of the chest. Like that's all you need, and people are excited about it. So yeah, I love that original poster for
Do you
Batman.
remember the haircuts, Andy?
where you get the bat signal shaved in the back of your head.
Yes.
Yep.
Casey, that was a thing. There was literally a stencil that the barbers would have so they could etch in a perfect Batman logo in the side of your head.
Yeah, I did not have that.
I did
No.
not either. I did not either.
go that
I
far.
was a child of the 80s, so I had a mullet.
If I'm remembering correctly, and maybe I'm wrong, is it like they put yellow in it too, like where they
They
shaved
may-
out, or am I
they-
thinking of like
may
maybe
have.
certain people did? I don't know.
Maybe
Yeah.
certain people did, but I'd say your basic general just version was just you get a nice clean cropped whatever, and then they would
Mhm.
etch it in whatnot. I also want to point out is the fact that we have a very established Jack Nicholson in this movie and whatnot when we're going into this and whatnot. But I think one of the reasons why I think it was very planned well for the fact that all we have is just that logo for that poster is going into this. Someone tried to believe that Michael Keaton can be the lead in a superhero as an action hero kind of thing, because prior to this, you were talking like Beetlejuice and Mr.
Mr.
Mom,
Yeah.
the funny guy.
Mhm.
People are gonna look at this going, really? Michael Keaton is going to be Batman, whereas like if you go into this here with just a logo and a date, you're like, well, I'm intrigued. I want to go see this. Oh wow, he actually is really good. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think a big part of that is the movie is selling it as, one, it's a Batman movie. Two, when you go into like the further marketing, it's not necessarily that Keaton's Batman. It's Nicholson is playing Joker as the big selling acting part of this.
Well,
And,
he does have top billing in this movie, though.
He
too.
does. He's the main character of the movie. For a movie called Batman, he's the main character of the movie.
Yeah.
Which is something.
When your first four Batmans, two of them are top billed by the villains and not by the Batman.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, the Burton Batman movies are the villains are the main characters, then Batman, which we can talk about. This movie less so than the next one, Returns. But like some of the names, I want to throw out some of the names that were talked about for Batman and Joker, because I find these both just fascinating who they had in mind. Obviously, some of the big names they had in mind for Batman included like the big action stars at the time: Mel Gibson, Kevin Costner, Charlie Sheen, Tom Selleck, who might have been. You could have had a Tom Selleck double bill there, Andy, when you first watched Batman.
Could you imagine the mustache on Batman?
Oh, it'd be glorious.
I imagine he would shave it. I imagine he would have to shave it.
I wish he didn't. I wish he'd keep it.
Right.
There's a thing that's synonymous for Selleck, and it's that mustache. I don't know. They would have tried to go for it.
Some of the others: Bill Murray, because he's Bill Murray. Harrison Ford, Dennis Quaid, Pierce Brosnan. What a group. Also, Willem Dafoe was thrown out for both Batman and Joker for this.
Yeah.
He's still getting thrown around to play the Joker. Someone please just make this happen. But of all those names, looking at the movie we got, I guess in hindsight being what it is, Michael Keaton is the guy to play Batman at this time. But let's take it back to 1989. Like, is there anyone else you guys could picture in this movie that we got playing the role of Bruce Wayne Batman?
It's tough to think about that now because he is so solidly Batman. You think about who else was famous at that time. Tom Cruise wasn't really an action star, but he was a movie star. And Top Gun is an action movie. I mean, it has action in it, but
he's not performing the action.
Yeah,
right.
He's pretending to fly before he learned how to fly later on in life.
The only one I would throw out there is Mel Gibson.
Yeah,
of seeing like, this guy could have pulled it off.
I don't know. I don't agree with that. Just because I think especially at the time and whatnot, I think of like your Lethal Weapon and stuff like that. I think he would have tried to turn it up to an 11, and I don't think it would have worked with Mel Gibson.
Keaton turns it up to an 11 though in this.
Yeah.
But
can you imagine Mel Gibson say, "Want to get nuts? Let's get nuts."
There's a difference between a Keaton 11 and a Gibson 11 though. because
Gibson
Keaton
11
11
is usually sexist and racist too.
Andy went there. Uh, I was going to say Joker is the one that I find very, very interesting too, because I want all of these guys to play Joker in some other version of this. Robin Williams,
Mhm.
Tim Curry, yes please. David
Yeah.
Bowie, yes please. John Lithgow, yes please. Brad Dourif, yes please.
Yeah.
Ray Liotta, I could see him in this version. And then James Woods, because why
Yeah.
not? Let's have James Woods as the Joker.
Right. Yeah, all of those first few names.
I think Tim Curry is just low hanging fruit because of it. However, I do think he can pull it off.
This was pre-it.
This was pre-it.
Okay, all right, I stand corrected.
He would crush it.
Yeah.
But knowing what I've seen from John Lithgow as a villain, I just want to see John Lithgow as a villain in any Batman iteration. I don't care where,
Mhm.
when, whatever. This is something that needs to happen. As his name gets brought up, I'm like, you know what? Especially after him in Dexter, for example, and some of the other stuff that I have seen him as a villain.
Cliffhanger.
One of these days I'll get around watching Cliffhanger.
Yeah.
But
It's a good
I
one.
would love to see him as just, maybe even like say a follow up to the Matt Reeves Batman, is giving him something nice and hearty to chew on as a villain in the Batman universe.
Probably a heart pill because he's old. That's all he can probably chew on anymore.
Ouch.
Sorry, John Lithgow, but he is old now.
It's true.
He's 76. I don't know what you're talking about. He's got plenty of life in him.
Hey, if Vince McMahon at 76 is climbing into the wrestling ring one more time, Lithgow can pull off the Joker, I guess.
Exactly.
It was me, Batman. It was me the whole time.
You son of a bitch. All right. Enough wrestling talk. This movie, though, again, I think hindsight being what it is, it's hard to look at anyone else besides Keaton, besides Nicholson, portraying these characters because it has now become so iconic. And for many people, both are still the versions of those characters when you think of them. When you think of Batman, for many people, it's, oh, Michael Keaton is the Batman. When you think of Joker, Jack Nicholson is the Joker. So it's
I will
perfect casting if there ever was one.
I will say the one thing for the sake of Nicholson and various other iterations of Joker that have come since him and whatnot, is the fact that he has his version of the Joker, which he plays extremely well. Like he knew how to play his version of the Joker. He's clearly the like the gangster type, the whatnot, and he knew how to play his version of it, which nobody has been able to touch his version of the Joker.
Yeah, and I think too, just kind of rewatching it this time, it never really occurred to me that there's a lot, and I know after how last week's conversation went, you won't like this comparison, but I feel like there's a lot of Cesar Romero influence on this Joker as well.
I would agree.
Nicholson, he's able to get dark and violent and aggressive and creepy, but he has these moments of glee where it's just this playful, demented villain as well. And I think, there's a lot of his performance that he probably owes some to Cesar Romero's performance, but I think he tweaks it in a way that it, of course, becomes his own. And I think he's, it's a clown prince of crime.
I'm going to go one step further, though, Andy, is that, and this is where it's like, I'm actually kind of glad we did go through 66 Batman last week here before me coming into watching this, because I hadn't seen the 66 Batman. I didn't really watch a whole lot of the TV show growing up or anything like that. But I mean, between Jack Nicholson's performances, not necessarily Keaton's performance, his version of Batman is nowhere near the Adam West, but in terms of the style, the set pieces, the way that the movie itself is constructed, to me it does feel like there is a lot of the 66 Batman influence on Tim Burton's. Like, if basically Tim Burton says, if I made this show, if I made that 30 years ago, what would my version look like? And I think what we got in 89 is what Tim Burton would have made if he had made it in 66. Just because like all the goons definitely have a little bit of that two-dimensional aspect of it, like they did in 66 and everything like that. But I agree with you. Like I did see a lot of those comparisons to Cesar Romero in terms of how Nicholson was playing him, but he wasn't playing him as an offbeat Joker. He was playing his version of like if Cesar Romero were a gangster and how I know how to play a gangster, this is how he's going to come out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, Nicholson does the best of portraying both sides of what people love the Joker for, of being kind of this chaotic, fun, hyper influential character who has, wears these, very bright colors, and it is full of fun, but kind of in this demented way, and playing like that demented side of, yeah, he might be fun and crazy and pull a trigger on a gun and it just says bang, or he might pull the trigger on a gun and blows your brains out. Like that's this Joker of, yeah, you don't know which version of him you're gonna get, and he is pretty damn scary in this movie. Like, the even before or when he has like the, face paint that is like coming off, and it's like you don't know where his face ends and the Joker face begins. It's really scary imagery in this movie, or like the line "Wait till they get a load of me" is it's still like, oh god, what's this guy gonna do? Like, Batman, you better stop him because this guy's nuts. This guy's insane. Jack Nicholson is so great in this, and even as now we've gotten how many different Jokers since this, and all of them pretty much
two Oscar-winning Jokers, like two people who have won Oscars for their portrayal of the Joker.
Where was Jack Nicholson's back in '89? Come on, Academy.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've gotten all these other versions.
I was going to say, I think that if they actually would have let this be a supporting role instead of Jack Nicholson being the lead, I think there would have been a better shot at it than being the lead actor playing the Joker. But maybe not, because at that time, even more than now, I don't know. Maybe that's not true, because there were a lot of comedies and science fiction movies that found their way to Oscar nominations. Earlier on than, once we kind of hit that art house boom, then they stopped kind of looking at the genre movies. So I don't know. I would say he probably would have stood a better chance as a supporting actor, but oh well, that's history. He didn't get it.
He didn't. And one thing about his Joker, I think Batman fans of like comic book storylines kind of look at is, oh no, he has an origin story. This isn't the Joker.
Yeah.
Like, well, this is this version of the Joker, and I'm like, for an origin story of how Jack Napier becomes the Joker, does a damn good job of portraying that. And I think even for a movie that also includes Batman's, history, his birth, his origin story of how his parents get killed, including Jack Napier in that, I think is perfect for this movie. Whereas like modern day, I don't know if necessarily tying the two together works as much, but for trying to encompass Batman really for the first time on the big screen in this capacity, having those storylines combined adds levels to the dichotomy of Batman versus the Joker, adds history between the two characters.
Yeah, and I think if you're trying to, excuse me, this early on, comic book adaptations for the big screen are non-existent. I mean, you've got Superman, and you've got Ninja Turtles is like a year later. So I mean, you have them, but not really. And this is like the first one where it's like, okay, how do we pile 60 years of history into our first like real big budget movie? What do we take? We've got to take the iconic characters, we've got to get the origin in there, but how do we make it so it's something that's accessible for audiences that don't read comic books but will come see this movie? And I think nowadays comic book movies are that's the box office. Like that's it. Every week there's a comic book movie that's anticipated, or
it's almost
is
the reason
leaving
why
theaters.
It's almost like the reason why we're doing this entire month.
Yeah, weird. I mean, was there a tie-in? Is there something Batman coming out? I don't know.
Yeah, the DC Super Pets.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Secret Life of Super Pets. Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, they had to really pine away at the storyline to kind of pick and choose what would tell the best Batman story for a big screen movie. And I think with what they ended up with, I think really works for, I think of course you're going to have, and I say this term being one, but you're going to have comic book nerds who are, uber critical of
Mm-hmm.
what, where these characters come from, what storylines they choose. But you have to understand that movie making is an entirely different industry, and they've got to make their money and try and get people to come in and have it make sense so that you can have a franchise.
Well, and as I'm with you there, and granted, I haven't collected a comic in many many years or
Yeah.
have read my comics and whatnot, but I'm like you, I read them for quite a long time and whatnot,
Mhm.
and I do wish that more people would understand between licensing and different distributions, and we have the MPA, like we used to have the comic code and whatnot, but at the same
Yeah.
time too, we have to modify storylines or change things up, whatever, because sometimes what works on paper, what works in a comic, might not work logistically on, in a movie, just the same as like someone says, well, this isn't how they did it in the book.
Yeah.
Well, you have 40 pages, you can make that work in a book. You've got 5 minutes on screen and whatnot. Sometimes things won't work and you have to take a little bit of those licenses. So you get those people that are getting all like nitpicky and whatnot. You're like, just let it go.
Yeah.
Enjoy the movie for what the medium is that you have and what they're giving you.
Yeah, and I think too, you have characters that have been around for so long, the character changes, like in the comic book. Like,
Yeah.
so you which version of this character do you want to use? Do you want to use like the 1930s Batman where he's a detective? Do you want to use the Batman of the comic book when the 60s TV show came out and it was a little silly? Do you
Yeah.
want to use the gritty kind of like coming back to dark detective story of the 70s and 80s? It's like what version do you want to tell? And then everything has to kind of line up. But yeah, I think the route that they went, I mean, clearly it did well.
Yeah.
It was what was needed. So
Well,
think
and I would say this Batman, yeah, I would say the Christopher Reeves Batman, Superman kind of opened the door in the late 70s and get us into what they're like, what DC's like, 11 years later, hey, we can make a Batman movie. And because these different studios, and like you figure some of those like stupid old, like the Dolph Lundgren like Punisher, for example, right?
yeah.
Some of these studios were trying, but I think
Mhm.
it's this movie right between 89 and 92 when Batman Returns comes out that basically tells these studios these movies can work, because then it's only within less than a decade after that basically is when the floodgates opened.
Yeah.
And I think a positive of the changes that this movie makes is that this is maybe the most accessible Batman
Mhm.
movie ever made, because it'll get the comic book fans in, because it is a pretty faithful adaptation of the
Mm-hmm.
biggest Batman storylines, and of course Batman and Joker. But I think more so, having it come out in 1989 got people into comic books and continued, like Brian said, the trend of comic book movies coming out after this. Because I mean, people want to talk about, oh well, comic book movies started with, like, the big trend that we're in now started with Spider-Man 2002, or it
Mm-hmm.
started with X-Men a few years before that. No, it started with Dark Knight in 2008. I'm like, no,
Yeah.
comic book movies have been on pretty steady rise since 1989
Well,
Yeah.
because of this. And people will even say Superman, but I think Superman was in this little box of,
yeah, I
sure,
agree.
we're gonna have Superman the movie come out, but then
Yeah.
we're only gonna do Superman movies after.
Yeah.
Because you
Whereas this
can't.
movie comes out, and like Andy said, it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles after this. Darkman comes out, The Shadow, Dick Tracy. You have
Yeah.
everything that comes out in the 90s from, Blade, the X-Men, all the Batman sequels. So I think this is a real Kickstarter into Hollywood being like, yeah, we can make a lot of money off this, can't we?
Well, I
Yeah.
would, I would, I would have to, I would have absolutely 100% agree, and I would even say is that is the huge mega blockbuster that is Marvel right now. Marvel can directly basically say, yes, we could attribute our success to Batman and to what DC did before we did, because prior to Blade in '98, all they had was Howard the Duck, which was an epic failure. But you can't tell me that, like I said, 89 Batman Returns in 92 doesn't say, you know what, Marvel's like, you know, we're going to give New Line a shot and we're going to give them Blade because it's probably far enough where people don't know it's a Marvel property until we tell them it's a Marvel property, so we can kind of glide underneath the radar and see how it does.
Yeah,
So
and
I think we can attribute all of this success to right now.
Yeah, I think, and now we're seeing the trend of Batman. I mean, we're getting Keaton's Batman coming back in a movie 40 years later. We'll see how that turns out. I'm very, very wearisome of how that's going to go. But he's coming back and might be the Batman alongside Mr. Pattinson, Robert Pattinson. Having dueling Batmans will be surprisingly Keaton and someone who was maybe born when this movie came out, maybe not. I can't remember. I don't know how old Mr. Robert Pattinson is. But let's jump into the movie a little bit.
Yeah.
Like I said at the top, this is my favorite Gotham City. And every time I watch it, it's still the thing that stands out the most to me while watching it is how visually interesting this movie is. And that's where I know, at least, I don't know Brian's full feelings on Mr. Burton. Andy, I know your feelings on Tim Burton. But for me, he might be one of my top 5 directors of all time. I love his work. His later stuff is garbage, but maybe it's just... Maybe I'm more hard on it because I do love the early work so much. But
I think that's part of it.
He's the perfect guy to do this movie. He might not fully understand the Batman character like people give him criticism for, or not really care about it and cares more about the villains. I don't care. I think the story he's telling here is pretty damn simple. Of guy has traumatic past, wants to save the city and avenge that, dresses up like a bat and stops criminals.
Yeah.
It's the nuts and bolts of what Batman is.
Right.
And I do think that Tim, you can clearly see this is a Tim Burton film. If there's one thing about certain directors, regardless of what their story is, Tim Burton is one of those guys. Is like you can always tell a Tim Burton movie.
Yeah.
And this is clearly a Tim Burton movie. Do I agree with you? Does he kind of lean into more dealing, wanting to give the villains more depth? Absolutely. But sometimes we don't get that as much anymore these days because everybody's all about like we need to make that star be the star. We need to make the hero the absolute hero, and our villains don't get enough depth whatsoever. And he's like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to make my version of it, which he has gone on record later on and be like, I hate comic book movies. Like, dude, you've made some of the best comic book movies we've ever got. Own it, live by it. But you can definitely clearly tell this is a Burton movie. And he was 3 when this movie came out, so he wasn't seeing this in the theaters when Pattinson was when this movie was coming out.
Yeah. I listen. I'm gonna talk about Tim Burton for a second.
Timmy B.
I think the 80s, 90s Tim Burton, not much better. There's no director who has such a signature style that is as successful as him to me. And I feel like that run of movies, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Beetlejuice, Edward Scissorhands, this Batman Returns, Ed Wood, it's just a home run. Like it just that series of movies, it doesn't get much better for me. And I just think Tim Burton of now, like for me, he just is kind of like, I'm Tim Burton, bitch. So he just is gonna be like, well, I'm just gonna throw, look at this, a silly character. I'm gonna put Danny DeVito in it. Why not? Who am I dating right now? She's gonna be the lead. I just think Tim Burton now has kind of lost that connection. I think where now it feels like he's churning out like he was churning out something that he was very passionate and connected to. And I think there are some other movies in there, in the mix that I really enjoy. Like I love Big Fish. I think Big Fish is fantastic. It's not a Tim Burton original, but he has definitely put his stamp on it, as a director. But yeah, I think that the world that he has created here, this Gotham is my Gotham too. And while since this movie's come out, we've had a lot of other Batman movies that have released. One of them is probably my favorite Batman movie, and that's not very original to say, but this is still my Gotham. Like this is the Gotham that I think of in my head, because it looks like a city in disarray, but it also looks like it's a heightened city. Like it's you have people in costumes that are causing havoc and trying to fix havoc. So you want your city to match that theatricality of it, and this is a very dramatic world. Like I said, The Dark Knight is now my favorite Batman movie. I just think it's great. But that Gotham looks like Chicago, and because it is. And it's the same thing with all of those Batman movies. Even Batman Begins, it looks like dark New York City or dark Chicago. Dark Knight Rises, yeah, it looks like dark Chicago, San Francisco, New York City. This looks like a Gotham City that was created to be Gotham City. And I think that the production designers, I think the year that this came out was the first year that I really cared about the Academy Awards, because I wanted Batman to win stuff, because I thought it looked super cool. And I don't remember if it won, but I know it was nominated. So yeah, I think the design of this film is just chef's kiss.
Well,
Fantastic.
and I would certainly say is that the one thing I like about this movie, and it's sometimes it's really hard to say that about some movies and whatnot, is you can clearly tell that pretty much 99% of this movie is all soundstage. Like anything that is skyline, everything like that, you can clearly tell is like the matte paintings, stuff like that, because they wanted to look more like a comic book more than, like you said, like Chicago or Pittsburgh or wherever they're filming on location and whatnot. Even when they're going down the road and everything like that in the Batmobile, you can it straight up looks like it's just basically it's on inside a warehouse and everything is built. But that's what gives it that unique character that the other Batman movies don't have. I think the Schumacher ones try to do that, but I don't think they quite get to that same gritty, dark version of like what Tim Burton does.
The Schumacher ones would work better if he was making a Batman Beyond, like techno noir.
Yes.
Like that version of Gotham City 50 years in the future, not this happened 2 years after Keaton's Batman. It's like, oh no, these are different worlds. But I think Gotham City, and that's a big thing in all Batman movies, has to be another character. And another character that needs to be present in these is the Batmobile. And like all three of us said, I think we're all in agreement. This is the Batmobile in this movie. It has such a unique look. You can't pinpoint like, what is this car? It's the Batmobile. Like you can't pin it as a like a military vehicle like the Nolan ones, or the new one like it's a American muscle car. It's like, no, this is just the Batmobile, and only one person in the world is ever going to have this, and it's this weirdo living up in that castle outside Gotham City.
Yeah.
30, 40 years later, I would digress to say is that there's many versions of this Batmobile that are built on Corvette chassis. I'm just saying.
But you look at that car. You're not going to know what the hell that is.
Right.
Yeah. I'm not a car guy, so I know nothing about speed or anything like that. But I look at.
But you wanted to own this car as a kid. Every kid of the 80s and 90s wanted to own this car. Like mom, dad. When I grew up, the first thing I'm buying the Batmobile, and they were sad when you found out you could not buy the Batmobile.
Oh yeah, like like I said, I don't know cars at all, but I know movie cars. Like if I could have had the Batmobile, the A-Team van, and the DeLorean, my life would have been perfect. But the thing about this car is that I love it. I think it looks awesome. I don't understand how it can be so front heavy and handle so well, because I feel like the car is just gonna go. Because that's a very long.
That jet engine's really heavy.
What I love is how they show that though in this movie is how he like shoots the grappling hook out, and that's how he makes the turns. Like that's awesome. Like that's a great way to kind of get around that. Of this is a big bulking monster of a vehicle that if it's driving down the street and there's other cars, it's just gonna throw them into the air.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
if he has to make
Bruce
a turn,
Wayne's-
yeah, he's got to use the gadgets.
right. Sometimes Bruce Wayne's driving ability isn't going to be enough. He's got to have a little bit of help.
Speaking of Bruce Wayne, this is such an interesting take on Bruce Wayne, I think, because he is a Tim Burton Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
Where he's not like the flashy, flamboyant, like Playboy Bruce Wayne, and then, oh, I'm dark and brooding Batman. It's like, no, you're just a weirdo Bruce Wayne who hangs out by himself and all intents and purposes only exists to be Batman. And then when he's Batman is, you know, what you kind of expect to be Batman, an ass-kicking vigilante. But I don't know. I think his Bruce Wayne is very interesting, and it's how Michael Keaton plays him and how Burton directs Keaton to play him is that he is definitely, you can tell already in this that he's, you know, a traumatized person to go out at night and dress up like a bat. And I think that's where the Vicky Vale character comes in to the movie and plays such a vital part of us as an audience kind of understanding this Bruce Wayne just a little bit more. And she's a great love interest for him too. You totally buy it. It's not like deep or anything, but you buy it.
It's time for me to play my role as our friend group's horny critic.
Let's hear it.
So, you know, before this movie, like my big screen crush was Carrie Green from the Goonies, like, and she was in Lucas as well. And I was like, yeah, she's so cute. She's so cute. Kim Basinger as Vicky Vale, like, I didn't know that other women existed, like, until once this movie. Well, you know, but again, I also like I feel like I was going through a change at 8 years old. Like, it was already starting for me, where I was like, yeah, girls are great. But yeah, Vicky Vale is just like beautiful and funny. Like, she has some really funny lines. I think, you know, I'm glad that Kim Basinger over the years has had the opportunity to take on meaty parts and even win an Oscar, because she's not much more here than as the movie goes along, she becomes where she's just the damsel in distress. You know,
that was gonna say is that was one of the things that as I'm watching this, because it honestly had been a while since I had watched this movie and whatnot, and you started looking in more of a critical eye. Like, you see all the things, like when she's in the newsroom and she's actually like putting down like the heart, she's actually getting like good dialogue and whatnot. But like, it's like her opposite Jack Nicholson, she turns into, like you said, the damsel in distress. You know, she's up there in the bell tower and whatnot. You're like, she goes from super meaty, like you want to see more of that Vicky Vale, to the most two-dimensional, like Burton didn't know quite how to use her as the catalyst between the three of them.
Well, Burton doesn't understand females at all in real life or in movies.
What's that? I'm casting my girlfriend in this movie. Wait, who's this other girl in this movie that I cast? Like, the man transitions from girlfriend to girlfriend. Like, I feel like that's part of his casting process. Like, this is very like gossipy, and I get that, but it's like, maybe me and Helena Bonham Carter are kind of on the rocks, but who is this Eva Green? What? You're in my movie now.
They're not.
I agree.
They're not a thing, though, are they?
They are.
Are they? What?
Yeah.
Eva Green, what are you doing? Come on.
I know. I don't know if they are currently, but at the time that Dumbo came out,
at least not according to Wikipedia. They're in that little box. Eva Green.
Does it say who he's with now?
Hold on. You got me.
I was going to say, from what I understood, he hasn't been with anyone since Helena Bonham. We're not going into full Tim Burton People Magazine gossip.
And welcome to the Celebrity Dating Show. I'm your co-host.
According to Wikipedia, all we have is Lisa Marie from 91 to 2001 and Helena Bonham Carter from 01 to 14.
I wonder if they were
nothing officially Wikipedia style.
What am I doing? Welcome to the E Network.
Welcome to the Us Weekly version
All
of
right,
Batman
let's bring it over
605.
to Mario Lopez. Mario, he is on site on Tim Burton's castle. Mario, what is the latest scoop?
Celebrities are just like us, guys. Guess what? Tim Burton did his laundry today.
Back to you. Back to Batman.
Yeah.
We'll talk about a two-dimensional Batman love interest next week with Nicole Kidman, who is just, her character trait is, I want to F Batman, and that's it. Which is, it's a choice, and I'm there for it next week.
Listen, I live up to my name with that one. I live up to my.
But I think the love interest stuff works for what it's presenting,
and she still has some moments that are great. Like it's not just, I mean, that's what the character becomes, but she still does good things with it. Like I think that the where she's trying to take Joker's attention so that Batman can sneak into place so that he can save her, the where she starts kissing on him and she gets the like fuzz in her mouth and you watch her pull it out, and then purple, I love purple. Like I think that's a fun moment. And yeah, I think she does a really good job in this movie, even if maybe the character goes through this kind of change from tough, fierce to oh no, save me, Batman, save me.
She's also our introduction to both Batman and Joker as like an audience surrogate. We're in her shoes for the first half of the movie, and once we're into the world, it's like, yeah, you served your purpose. Time to focus on Batman and Joker, which is not fair to the character, but I think for the story is what she's really there to progress and move forward. And I like her interactions a lot with Knox. I think he's really funny in this.
I want more of him. I'm just saying. I've always enjoyed him.
Yeah, I think it's a fun character. I remember when I was little, not so much. Like I don't think I liked him as much because I think I would open up a pack of Batman trading cards, and the Alexander
always got
Knox,
his.
It was always his card, and I was like, come on, I want Batman cards, and I got Knox. So,
I remember those cards because number one, it's like, oh, Topps cards, you got to get it for the bubble gum. But then you would get all these cards, you'd be like, oh, I finally, you'd get like every random character that you did not care about in those cards. And you'd be like, I want the Batman card. And you'd be like, not this time, Johnny.
Oh, cool. A Carl Grissom again. Yay.
I will say when the credits opened up, I completely forgot Jack Palance was in this movie. Yeah. And it made me stupid excited to go, oh, that's right.
This movie does a good job of casting all those side characters, because another one that stands out, and I think he just gets shafted as the series goes on, is Billy Dee Williams, who is I think is an inspired pick to play Harvey Dent, who would later become Tommy Lee Jones.
Right?
Yeah.
I like how nobody talked about the fact that, when Harvey Dent turned into Two-Face, that he went from black to white. I mean...
and went from a good performance to a god-awful one.
Oh, man. Yeah.
It's bad. Well,
it's real bad.
It's bad.
Yeah,
he's good. And he's very small in this, and it's a nice like setup if you know who Two-Face is, and you like comic book fans. That's like kind of an early version of, here's an Easter egg of what might happen in the future. If you know, the movie doesn't set it up at all. It's just laying seeds that if you're a comic book fan, or if you're gonna do sequels, it's there for that.
Well, yeah. Like if you're gonna make a movie and you're gonna have the district attorney in there, the district, if it's early enough in there and Two-Face doesn't exist, you best believe that your district attorney better be Harvey Dent.
The earnestness of the Harvey Dent character before he turns is just fantastic. Like I think that Billy Dee Williams has that, I want to make this city better, and that's such the key of Harvey Dent before he became Two-Face. Was his goal was to turn Gotham around. He had faith in the city. He had faith in the people that live in the city. He wanted to make it a good place so people could thrive. And I think it would have been so cool to have seen Billy Dee Williams. And I think there's a comic book series now, Batman '89, where it takes, what if Billy Dee Williams was still you don't get to see his performances, of course, but they draw the character. So
I wouldn't be surprised with DC's animation division that, especially with Keaton coming back as Batman, that maybe we get like some version of Keaton's third Batman with Billy Dee Williams, and Marlon Wayans was cast as Robin, if I'm not mistaken, as well. So maybe we'll get like that animated hour-and-a-half long feature film. That would be really cool and would sell really, really well.
Not to go way off track here, but that's the one that always just, I'm like, what? That Marlon Wayans was cast to play Robin. And in my head, I'm just like, why? Like, what? Because it's such an out there casting choice.
It is,
but I mean, Michael Keaton was too.
Yeah, I was gonna say Michael Keaton was there has been multiple versions of characters throughout the Batman franchise where people have gone, you have to be kidding me, you cast who as this? And who's to say? I mean, like, I have a lot of people, they think of, you think of Marlon Wayans, you think, oh, super, like funny white girls, everything like that. And I'm sitting there going, the first thing I think of is like, have you ever seen his performance in Requiem for a Dream?
It's true.
Like, you got to sometimes give people a chance and credit, whatever. Because I also remember the whole Heath Ledger thing. Like the guy from 10 Things I Hate About You, you just casted the Joker because anybody's like, you can't do what Nicholson did. And like, yeah, and look how that turned out.
Yeah. Or, now you've got the Twilight vampire playing Batman. And that seems like it's gone well. People have appreciated it. So
I would certainly tell you as I certainly did, because it there's that, like, he understands where in the timeline he is for this version of Batman, and it serves its purpose.
Yeah,
like it makes sense to have somebody as young as Pattinson play Batman right now.
Check out the Backlot 605 Patreon to hear more thoughts on Mr. Robert Pattinson as the Batman in our first episode of our Batman little series on Patreon, where we're talking the Batman. But Batman 89, and I think overall casting is really incredible in this. I would have loved to have seen where we would have gone further past Batman Returns with this same core group. Obviously, we're not covering Batman Returns yet, but we'll eventually get to it. I don't know where I was gonna go. Do you guys have any other scenes you wanted to bring up? My other thing, I guess, that I was gonna kind of go back to with all the side characters and how Gotham is a character in its own is I love that this Gotham it feels very 80s, but it also is timeless in a way, because you do have all of the crime bosses and their little henchmen. They're like toting Tommy guns and like hanging off the side of cars. And it's like, is this taking place in the 30s? Is this 1980? Is this 2080? When does this take place? And I think that's super cool to have a Gotham that's like, in a way, very, very timeless.
Well, and that's where I think a lot of this version of Batman is you can directly link into like the animated series. There's a lot of that similarities in terms of, is it in this version of Batman and whatnot, it's almost like, yes, we've progressed through time. It's the 80s, it's the 90s and whatnot. But in terms of like our architecture, our vehicles and stuff like that, it feels very much like it's like 1930s. Like we never really got out of the 30s and 40s. And I think that's what adds to that character of the 89 Batman, is that it does still have that, it leans back into that gangster aspect I'm talking about with Nicholson and whatnot. It feels very much like you expect Jimmy Hoffa or somebody to pop up and be in cahoots with the Joker when this happens.
They have a press conference. Like the mobsters have a press conference. Like it looks like on the steps of City Hall. Like, guys, he's right there. Just arrest him. Like he's saying he's taking over the business. Just put him in jail, and you've got organized crime under control. And sure enough, of course,
he didn't say what business.
But yeah, I laugh at how organized crime is like. So yeah, we know it's there. well, what can we do? What can we do? Well, it's just a thing. Yeah, it's just it made me chuckle that it's like they are having that that press conference right there saying, yeah, we're turning over his businesses over to me, and everybody's like, yeah, we know what kind of business it is. Just makes me chuckle.
That's why they need a Batman to stop all of these
true.
these horrible human beings from doing this, these corrupt
Mhm.
individuals from doing this. And we also get the scene where we have one of my favorite Joker costumes of all time. It's so goddamn good.
Yeah.
The pen is mightier than the sword.
Yeah.
Just that look alone. I don't know if Funko has released a Funko Pop. They might have of that. I should probably get it if they have. But that's such a toy worthy look of the Joker in the black and white with the little lipstick right there.
The little mime lips.
It's perfect.
Yeah, it's such a fun scene. And there are always all these little things that talk about non-horror movies that scare you. Or scenes from non-horror movies that have scared you. And for me, it's just before. But that scene too, because I feel like that look at that mime Joker look is kind of terrifying. Like
especially the little wave.
Yeah, it's a little cold-blooded. So that freaked me out. But just before that is where he electrocutes the guy with the joy buzzer, and watching the skin kind of like, the coloration of the skin change, but it's like he's catching on fire and turning into toast. That was a scene that freaked me out. Tim Burton, I guess, had a way of doing that where non-horror sequences really got under scary sequences of non-horror movies really got under young Andy's skin. So
there is a Funko 2-pack of 1989 Batman, and the pen or the quill is mightier than the sword Joker there for you, Casey.
Ooh.
All right, I might have to pull the trigger. That's such a great look, like toy, very like toyetic. It's so great to Or if like NECA or someone, whatever the DC has their new line of figures that look actually really, really good. That would be a great Joker to have.
Super cool.
I hate the fact that NECA is understanding that people are really getting into these like super detailed character toys and whatnot, because they're too damn expensive now. They're like, we're gonna up the price for these things.
Everything is too expensive now, Brian. This is the world we live in.
I saw like a third-rate character for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for the Nickelodeon version that NECA put out, and it was $54. Like, no, I don't. If I'm paying $50, that shit better say Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and say Donatello, Michelangelo.
Yeah.
Here I am staring at all of my NECAs right now. Like, yep, totally worth it.
Yeah, I bet.
I bet. Especially one that is heavily inspired by this and the Batman animated series, the Goliath from Gargoyles, who's just looks goddamn incredible.
Nice.
Anyway, Batman, 1989. Do you guys have any other things you want to bring up before we get to final thoughts?
The sleazeball inspector detective or whoever it is that's working with them is just a tool bag, and he needed to go anyway.
Eckhart, who is in is it the Indiana Jones movie? No.
Yeah.
Is it? Yeah. Yeah, he's just kind of a he's the Harvey Bullock of the Tim Burton Batman movies, but like super corrupt Harvey Bullock, not the kind of like back and forth. I think that's a great character that gets taken out right away. I think Pat Hingle is great as Commissioner Gordon. It's kind of it feels very much like an homage to the Gordon of the 66 series, because he's jolly. He's kind of a jolly, but
he's not the brightest Commissioner Gordon either.
No, but he's also one of the few characters to make it through all first of the 4 Batman movies.
It's very true. Very true.
It's only him and Alfred are the only ones that make it through all 4 of them.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say too. Michael Goff, I think, as Alfred is just, for a long time, like that was how I pictured Alfred.
He was the definitive.
Like just the caring old man, and I think it not to spoil your conversation somewhere down the road, but in Batman and Robin, where he gets sick, as bad as that movie is, you do concern yourself with him because you've become so connected to that character, because he just delivers this fatherly, grandfatherly performance. And I agree with you, Casey. I think these little parts are so well cast, and they're kind of underappreciated, because you have to have everyone round out the world of this movie, and all of these little parts. Even Bob the Goon.
I was going to say Jack Nicholson's friend is really great as like the number 2 to the Joker.
Yeah, like it's just these every little bit really helps to make this movie something that has lasted as long as it has, and still has that, where people look at it with excitement of like, yeah, that Batman 89 is still great. And we've had a great series of Batman movies since then. Like, I think the Nolan Batman movies are awesome. Like, I just think they're really good, but it's as good as they are, it doesn't diminish how good this one is.
I would even say is, especially for Michael Goff, is that he really did become the definitive Alfred, because again, you may have Oscar award winning Michael Caine who comes on to play Alfred, but the first thing that's in the back of your mind is, can he live up to what Michael Goff did for Batman? And that's not to say that obviously and clearly that's not to say Michael Caine is a horrible actor, because clearly he's been doing what he's been doing for 60 years. But you get, I mean, even Andy Serkis as of now, kind of thing is that like, yep, we're finally to that point where we can feel accepted to recast our Alfred like we've been recasting every other character. But in the back of our minds, anybody who's grown up with Batman since '89 is always going to go back to, how do we compare them to Michael Goff's Alfred?
Yeah,
because
Jeremy Irons ain't on that level.
Oh,
or all the.
I forgot about him for a second.
Or
That's
the
right,
Alfred from Gotham, or the Alfred from Pennyworth, or I assume there's one in Titans. Probably there's probably more Alfreds than there is Batman at this point.
Yeah,
right.
I don't know what DC's doing. Anyway, yeah, he's great. Everybody's great in this movie, and I think that's a big thing of casting in this movie. Is just so incredible. The one part of this movie where I'm like, that's really goofy, but totally works, is when he's flying the I don't know what he calls it, the bat like airplane.
The Batwing.
That flies it up in front of the moon and then comes back down. It's like, yeah, we just need to get that shot.
Need that moment.
Doesn't make any sense. Nah. But we need that shot because it looks really cool.
We needed that shot so we can put it on the album artwork.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. That rather than any of the scenes here. So the score is great. Like, I'm not going to diminish that. I'm not going to diminish the score of this movie. It's fantastic. It's iconic. Like, that theme is just a banger. But what I really want to talk about here is the first CD that I ever purchased, and that is the soundtrack to the film featuring the music of Prince. What? Like, have you heard this whole album from start to finish? Have you listened to this whole thing?
I would even go as far as saying that for Prince doing Batman is also one of those other things that was kind of bucking the trend, because I mean, you didn't really hear a whole lot of like an artist doing the full soundtrack for a movie and whatnot. But then on top of it too, you're like, Prince, like, of all people of the late 80s and 90s, how did they convince the man of purple from Minnesota to be like, we want you to do Batman?
Basically, what Prince is doing on this soundtrack, I don't know if you've listened to the whole thing from start to finish, but this is Prince's rock opera, like his Batman rock opera, because the songs are written from the perspective of Batman and Joker and Bruce Wayne and Vicky Vale. Like, they're like, I think the liner notes for the CD, I think, even had like Vicky Vale colon and then the lyrics of the song. Like, I think the cassette did as well. And maybe I'm misremembering that, but it felt like this was all constructed as like, it almost seemed like it was a Batman rock opera. And then you close it up with the greatest song of all time, Bat Dance, which is just like it's movie clips set to music and like remixed and all of that. I did in like the summer that this came out, we bought the soundtrack on cassette, or my brother bought the soundtrack on cassette, and I lip sync to Bat Dance for a performance for like my mom's daycare in a Batman costume because I was obsessed. And yeah, I think the whole concept of the soundtrack is 100% ridiculous, but so good. Like there are songs on this thing that are so good, and you might scratch your head and go like, how the hell is this a Batman song? But it's just great. Like there's a love song on there called like the Arms of Orion, and it's there's no way it should be connected to Batman at all, but it's a really nice, a nice little ballad, and Prince is great. Like that's the thing about Prince, his music is just fantastic. So I love this stupid soundtrack. So
available on Apple Music.
One of the great Joker scenes of all time is with Party Man.
Man
is so goddamn good. And
I love when Prince just the Prince music just starts blaring when they're in the parade. You just cannot help but not want to dance.
Mm-hmm.
Trust, make you a real love of trust. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Very good stuff. This entire movie's good stuff. I'm going to go into my transition to my final thoughts of, this is a 5-star all-time classic.
Mm-hmm.
To steal Andy's line, a golden avocado, if you will. It gets that for me. Everything about this movie just works. It's hard to say. Like people ask all the time, who's your favorite Batman or what's your favorite Batman movie? I don't know if I have one. This is one of them. This is one of my favorite Batman movies of all time. One of my favorite Batman and one of my favorite, Jokers. And this movie works on every single level. I could watch this all the time, every single year. It is just one of the great Hollywood movies of the last 40 plus years now. If you haven't seen Batman 89, you're insane. Go watch it right now. You're gonna love it. Highly recommend. Batman 89.
Oh yeah. I mean, I would tell anybody to watch this movie because for everything that would be a slight fault, if you will, part of it I would say is it's a movie of its time. I think it ages very beautifully well because it seems very encapsulated, and like I said, because of the set pieces, like I said, it feels like it was, it's not in modern day Chicago or something like that. And I think that's what helps keep it in its little nest of time and whatnot. But I think everybody, like you said, it's cast beautifully. I mean, there isn't really a weak link in this here, other than maybe just a little bit on how some of the characters are used. But other than that, like you cannot watch this Batman and not appreciate everything that has come out of this Batman and everything that this Batman has created in the last 30 years.
Yeah, I love this movie. Like I love this movie, and I know a large portion of that is my nostalgic attachment to it because when this movie came out on VHS, and that was a big deal because it was available for sale and it was a slightly discounted price too. Like I think it was like $40, which
I was gonna say our cheap VHSs back then were still freaking expensive.
Yeah, and it was one that we pre-ordered from Applause Video. Like my dad picked it up on his way home from work, and I proceeded to, we watched it that night. But this was one of those movies that I watched every day for like a year. Like I would come home from school and put it on. Like I liked going outside and playing with friends, but watching Batman was better. And so I did that. And this was one of the movies that I had memorized from start to finish for a very long time. Not anymore because my brain is old. But but
even when I was watching this here a few days ago here, you're sitting there going, before the guy on the TV says the line that is already coming, you've already half said it, or right when to be able to deliver that same line though. Even 30 years later, Andy, I know you and I were doing the exact same thing.
Oh yeah. He stole my balloons. Why didn't somebody tell me he had one of those things? Bob, gun. Gonna need a moment alone, boys. Yeah, it's there are things that are burned into my brain from this movie, and it brings me such joy and happiness to think about and rewatch. And yeah, this is what made me fall in love with Batman. Like I liked Batman a lot before, but this is what really made it so that Batman is one of those things where people go, well, what are the things that you like other than movies? So I'm like, well, I like Star Wars, I like Queen, and I like Batman. Like those are my three big identifiers for a very, very long time. And yeah, I love this. And yeah, getting to watch it again just brought all that happiness right back.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Batman is the reason why Andy digs flicks.
Yeah. That's true.
Last question then, boys. If you're gonna obviously rewatch next time, you will rewatch Batman 1989, and you're gonna pair it with another movie that is not another Batman movie. What movie are you going to pair it with?
Andy looks stumped already.
Yeah, I knew I was going to be on the show, and I know this is your question. I know this is your. He's got a bat signal on his chair. Yeah, I
forgot to even mention. This. Yes, I spent extra money to get freaking a Batman chair when I started working from home. So if that says anything,
that's cool. Come back to me. Let me think about this, because I didn't think about it. Like, I mean, I have some that would be pretty obvious, but what's something outside the box?
I did think about this. I already had my answer for this. This movie has already been said as we've been talking about this. But as I was rewatching and seeing how this movie felt different now, watching it more critically than I had in previous before and whatnot, I absolutely would pair this with Dick Tracy. Because it has that same sort of like 1930s, 40s feel. It's more into like the set pieces and soundstage design of how they constructed the movie. And I just think in terms of the overall style, I think they would line up very beautifully with each other. And Dick Tracy's awesome.
I'm going to go, if I'm going to watch this, the one that came to mind this time is, I had Beetlejuice in mind, obviously, just because Keaton, Burton... Very similar style. But I'm gonna go with another superhero movie that for me is kind of the defining like entry point. If you've never seen a movie about Batman, I would probably recommend Batman 89 for people to watch to fully get into the character. But for me, another one that does that is Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man movie. Also has an incredible parade scene with the balloon animals and a fight on top of those this time. So I think another great defining superhero movie, also with a great Danny Elfman score. I think there's a lot of similarities between the two. So I would pair it with the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man.
Are you calling Sam Raimi a hack and he's just stealing from Tim Burton?
No, I'm saying Tim Burton wishes he was Sam Raimi. I also had a different Sam Raimi movie in mind, but I don't love it as much as I love Spider-Man. So
Spider-Man 3, I got it.
Which one?
Darkman.
Oh yeah.
Darkman would be a good one. You know, I mean, Darkman takes a lot of inspiration from Batman.
Yeah. I think I would actually. So it was funny because it was like, part of me was like, maybe Phantom of the Paradise, because it's a nice kind of eccentric, bizarre movie. But I'm actually going to go with Birdman. I'm going to go with Birdman because Michael Keaton's a star, and there's a lot thematically that I wonder if Michael Keaton genuinely wrestled with, because he went from playing this iconic superhero character and that kind of defining his career for such a large portion of time, and just desperately looking for something else to do and to get that respect from audiences doing something different. I think Michael Keaton is, like, to me, that's what really thrust Michael Keaton back into the limelight as someone that we need to take seriously as an actor. And he has not disappointed since. Like, even his appearances in movies that I don't like there was that action movie that came out last year called The Protege that I thought was fine until the ending of it. It took a twist and I was like, this is stupid. And then it just became like every other action movie.
I forgot that came out until now.
Yeah.
I was going to throw out RoboCop, where he's the only good part of that god-awful movie.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about RoboCop.
He makes these bad movies interesting because he is just so confident and so assured that, I think Birdman is the movie that came along that just reminded people that he is someone that needs to be taken seriously and needs to be cast in as many things as possible. So, Birdman.
Nobody can play Ken in Toy Story better than Michael Keaton.
Yeah, he's great.
He's great. That is it though for Michael Keaton in this series from Batman. Again, just leaving little breadcrumbs of hints. Won't be the last time we talk about Mr. Keaton this year though. So that has been our episode on Batman 1989. Go check it out if you haven't watched it in a while. Obviously, I think a lot of people are checking out Batman movies with the Batman in the theaters and being the talk of the movie industry right now. So, let's, I guess, get to the plugs for the show here. If you like this and you want to hear the rest of our Batman series, like I said, next week we are talking Batman Forever, Val Kilmer's one and only outing as the Caped Crusader, the introduction of Robin for the first time on the big screen since Batman 66. We're talking Batman Forever next week, and you can subscribe to us on Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, Amazon Music, and on YouTube to hear that and the rest of our Batman series here for the month of March. Brian, where can they find us on social media?
Social media, they can check us out: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd HQ, all at Backlot 605. Can also check us out at South Dakota Film Community Group, If I Could Talk Today. It is on Facebook, and a little group: filmmakers, film enthusiasts, film lovers, just people who love talking about movies like ourselves and Andy here. Definitely enjoying the conversation. You can support us over on Patreon at patreon.com/backlot605, where you can get all our additional bonus content and support the channel, where you're going to get a lot more Batman this month.
That you are getting 4 more bonus episodes on Batman, including The Batman, Batman and Mr. Freeze, Sub-Zero, Batman Under the Red Hood, and, unfortunately, Batman and Robin.
Oh boy.
We're gonna get a lot of Schwarzenegger jokes. I feel a lot of Casey.
I will say this. Thank you guys for not doing anything Zack Snyder related. That's that. I would take Batman and Robin over that any day.
Wow.
Yeah, I said it. Come at me.
I think you're over there. I think we did more by not saying anything about Zack Snyder's movies in this entire series.
Yeah.
So
if it's anything, it's Andy's fault. You're the one that brought it up, not us.
I hate
all I'm saying is we're talking about every other version of Batman except one. Sorry. But Andy, where can they find you and maybe listen to your love-hate relationship with the Batman Snyderverse movies?
Yeah, if you'd like to send me nasty messages because of my opinion of the Zack Snyder DC Universe, you can do so at Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Letterboxd. Just give a search for Fat Dude Digs Flicks, and you will find me there. You can also subscribe to my podcast, the same place you would catch these fellas' podcasts. Just do a search for Fat Dude Digs Flicks. By doing that, you will get the Criterion Break, with where I'm joined by my co-hosts Blake Genethan and Derek Verink, where we talk about our love for the Criterion Collection proper and the Criterion Channel. And you also get Let's Talk About, which is my interview show, where I will be sitting down with a guest to talk about their lives, their passions, and the impact that movies played on them, and then one movie in particular that has meant something to them.
Andy, I'm not going to let you off the hook because there is one more thing I just remembered. We do need to start plugging probably on the show here.
Yeah.
We have our next live event coming up on May 14th. We are getting our teams ready for our not a DC related property.
Yeah.
But we're talking Marvel MCU countdown coming up May 14th at Average Joe's Gaming. So keep that on your calendars out there. It'll be a teams countdown. Team Backlot 605 versus Team Wednesday Comics
Ooh.
versus Team A Comic Book Look
Ooh.
versus one person, Charlie Eccles.
Poor Charlie.
Andy, you are not going to be participating on this, but what's your thoughts on that? What do you think of the countdown, and what do you think should be towards the top?
Listen, I love this countdown idea. I think this is one that will might inspire the most
discussion,
rage. Yeah, discussion. We'll just say that the most discussion.
Yeah,
because I think there are movies that are very clearly near the bottom. And then I think there are movies that some people think should be near the bottom that aren't that bad. And then I think there are some movies that some people think should be near the top that probably shouldn't. But I have my opinions, very committed opinions. But I will be there. I'll be there to watch and probably offer some critique in one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll be there. I'll be there for sure.
Yeah, we're excited to have you there. I'm excited to hear your opinions because let's just face it, like the biggest controversy so far is not what's going to be number one, what's not going to be on the list. It's just Charlie's just a team by himself trying to play against nine other people. Listen, not good odds. Not good odds for Mr. Eccles.
Charlie has a whole lot of strong feelings towards all this. Whatever, he's like, I can do this.
And if there's somebody that can do it on its own, I think
it's not him.
Listen, maybe. I think Charlie is a capable human being. I think this is going to be really tough for him. I think he's going to really have to kind of pump himself up for it, and take his vitamins, eat his cereal, go to bed early, say his prayers, be a real American about it. And every real American needs to find a macho man once in a while, and I hope that Charlie finds it.
Yeah, he needs a mega power. He needs a best friend on this show, that's for sure. So we'll talk to Charlie when he comes on in 2 weeks for Mask of the Phantasm. I haven't heard if he has a teammate or not yet. I don't. There's been offers on the table, I guess, but I've not heard anything one way or the other. But I mean,
I'm pulling for him. Just because, if for no other reason, like he's a decent fella. He is. Listen, I can see it in your eyes that you're kind of like.
No, he's a decent fella. He's a good guy. I love Charlie, but it's just the fact that we have teams and he's just not on one. It's very strange that
he deserves to have someone in his quarter who is proud to call him a friend.
He needs a Miss Elizabeth out there. So hopefully he finds it. But that's, again, coming up May 14th, MCU Tag Team Countdown, Average Joe's Gaming. More details will be coming in the weeks and months to follow, but keep that date on your calendars. Andy, what can we expect from Fat Dude? Any hints of, besides Giallo? This is hard to say. July.
I like to call it July, where it just sounds like you're saying July, but you're adding a little bit more emphasis on the beginning of it. I don't have any like big name guests booked, but I'm very excited. I will be finally sitting down with Zach Dresch, local stand-up comedian who is just a delight. Getting to chat with him about the Weird Al Yankovic comedy classic, UHF. So I am super excited for that. And then, I guess we'll just kind of see what the month has in store for everybody else. Yeah, I'm I'm pumped. I'm trying to get people lined up, and as I think you guys can attest to, sometimes that works really well and is super easy. Other times it's kind of like, hey, you still want to do the show? You still want to come on? So yeah, working on it.
Looking forward to it though, Andy. That'll be such a great conversation with Zach. Good guest to have on the show.
Yeah.
So everybody go check out Fat Dude Digs Flicks. That is it for this episode. Like I said, next week, if you are trying to keep up with everything going on, Batman Forever, Mr. Val Kilmer's take on Batman. So that is next week. So thank you all again for watching, listening, and all the fun things like that. Sam Lenz hopefully will be returning next week. But Andy, thank you again so much for coming on. Hopefully we will have you on very, very soon. I think that's it, boys. Is that's it? That's it. That's all.
That's it.
That's
That's all.
That's it. All right.
That's
Hit
all.
the music. See you later,
Bye.
everybody. Peace.